very, very good football player. He has the physicality, he's a very mobile six. He has the body, he loves to defend, he loves to put his body inside to win duels. He loves passing, he loves to break the lines, and he's just very mobile in his game. It was a pleasure to see.
When Thomas Tuchel said that, he wasn't talking about Declan Rice or Jude Bellingham. He was talking about Elliott Anderson, the Nottingham Forest midfielder who had already been catching eyes for both Forest and England long before this latest performance put his name back in the headlines. Going into that Forest versus Manchester United clash, all the talk was about United's 3 wins in a row. The question was whether they could make it 4 against a struggling Forest side on their 3rd manager in 10 games. For some United fans, victory felt inevitable, but what they didn't expect was that Elliott Anderson, reportedly a January target for Manchester United, would be the one turning that game into a statement. And as the dust settled, one question echoed louder than the scoreline. Is the hype real? Or is Elliott Anderson truly worth the £100 million price tag Nottingham Forest have reportedly placed on him? But before we get into what that United audition really exposed, let's rewind. Because Elliott Anderson's story didn't begin under the bright lights of the City ground or with England's senior team. It started years earlier, long before the headlines, before the price tag, before the pressure, with a kid from Whitley Bay who was never meant to steal the spotlight, but quietly learned how to take it. Before the headlines and the £100 million debates, there was just a boy from Whitley Bay, quiet, focused, and already obsessed with the ball at his feet. Elliott Jr. Anderson was born on November 6, 2002, with football running deep in his roots. His grandfather, Jeff Allen, had once played for Newcastle United, so maybe destiny was already written somewhere between the North Sea winds and the black and white stripes of the Toon. He joined Newcastle's academy at just 8 years old after catching attention at the famous Wallsend Boys Club, the same youth setup that once produced Alan Shearer and Michael Carrick. From the start, coaches noticed something rare. He wasn't flashy, but he was fearless. The kind of kid who didn't just want the ball, he wanted responsibility. Fast forward to his teenage years, and that quiet determination turned into results. Elliott Anderson signed his first professional deal with Newcastle in November 2019, then a long-term contract the following year on his 18th birthday. His first team debut came soon after, an FA Cup tie against Arsenal in January 2021. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't headline-grabbing, but it was a beginning. Still, every young player hits that wall, too good for youth football, not yet trusted for the Premier League. That's when the Bristol Rovers loan came calling in January 2022, a turning point. Elliott Anderson walked into League Two like he didn't get the memo that he was supposed to struggle. 8 goals, 5 assists, and one unforgettable solo run against Harrogate that had fans calling him the Geordie Maradona. Joey Barton, his manager then, went even further, saying he had shades of Gaza. It wasn't just hype. That loan spell ended with promotion, 2 Player of the Month awards, and a place in League Two's Team of the Season. Not bad for a teenager carrying a club up the table. When he returned to Newcastle, expectations grew. He signed another new deal in 2022 and got a taste of big occasions, including a late cameo in the Carabao Cup final against Manchester United. But the road wasn't smooth. Injuries crept in, and a back problem sidelined him for nearly 4 months during the 2023 season. For some, that would have been the beginning of the fade. For Elliott Anderson, it was just fuel. So when Nottingham Forest came in with an offer in the summer of 2024, it wasn't just a transfer, it was a rescue deal born out of desperation. Newcastle were under serious profitability and sustainability rule pressure, scrambling to balance the books before the financial deadline. Elliott Anderson was one of their most valuable homegrown assets, and selling him quickly became a painful necessity rather than a football decision. The deal, reportedly worth around £35 million, went through fast. No buyback clause, no sell-on percentage, nothing to protect the club. Eddie Howe later admitted it was a bargain sale they never wanted to make. But for Elliott Anderson, the move to Forest was a lifeline, a chance to step out of Newcastle's shadow and finally play consistent Premier League football. He walked into Forest with the hunger of a man who'd waited long enough, and within weeks, he was proving it. August Player of the Month, his first Premier League goal in January, a full England debut that September under Tuchel, after winning the under-21 Euros earlier that summer. The boy from Whitley Bay wasn't just surviving anymore, he was arriving. And that's what makes the United audition so fascinating, because when Elliott Anderson walked onto that pitch at the City ground, it wasn't about potential anymore, it was about proof. November 1st, 2025, City ground. Manchester United arrived chasing a fourth straight win under Ruben Amorim. Nottingham Forest, on their third manager in 10 games, were desperate for stability. On paper, it was supposed to be another routine win for the Red Devils. But instead, it turned into a midfield audition that nobody saw coming. From the first whistle, Elliott Anderson played like a man possessed. He pressed high, demanded the ball, and dictated Forest's rhythm from the centre. Every touch carried intent. Every duel mattered. He outshone every midfielder on the pitch, not because others were poor that day, but because he embodied everything United had been missing. And the timing couldn't have been more poetic. Just a week earlier, Carlos Baleba, another player United had been tracking. Carlos Baleba endured a nightmare of an Old Trafford audition when Brighton lost 4-2 to United. He looked off the pace, caught out of position, and was hauled off before the hour mark. Elliott Anderson, by contrast, looked fearless. Where Carlos Baleba appeared spooked by speculation, Elliott Anderson played like he belonged in the conversation, dictating rhythm, pressing with intelligence, and driving Forest forward with intent. At times, he was everywhere, breaking lines, carrying the ball through pressure, snapping into tackles, and swinging in corners from both flanks. He looked fearless, and for long spells, he made United's experienced midfield look second best. United struck first in the 34th minute. Bruno Fernandes floated in a corner, and Casemiro rose highest to nod it home, a textbook header. The visitors looked in control, 1-0 up, business as usual. Forest refused to back down. Just 3 minutes into the second half, Morgan Gibbs-White met a Ryan Yates cross to level it. Then, barely 2 minutes later, Nicolo Savona pounced on a loose ball inside the box to smash Forest 2-1 ahead. The City ground erupted, and from that moment, the match turned into a statement. Elliott Anderson was right in the thick of it. He helped spark the move that led to Forest's equaliser, driving the ball through midfield and releasing Yates into space. One moment, he was threading passes. The next, he was winning loose balls or drawing fouls, including a tactical one on Bruno Fernandes that summed up his control of the battle. He was a protagonist in every sense, not just involved, but in command. Then came the 81st minute, and one of the goals of the season. Forest failed to clear a corner. The ball dropped to Amad Diallo on the edge of the box, and with his left foot, he unleashed a thunderous volley that rocketed past Matt Sells and into the top corner. VAR checked it. The stadium froze, and then the away end erupted. The home fans stood stunned. Scores level, 2-2. A goal with an XG of just 0.02. Pure technique, pure audacity. Amad nearly won it in stoppage time. His effort cleared off the line. But by then the narrative had already shifted. Because as the final whistle blew, all the talk wasn't about Diallo's wonder strike. It was about the midfielder who had just outplayed United's engine room, Elliott Anderson. The stats backed the story. 100% tackle success, 15 progressive passes, 14 ball recoveries, and 3 chances created. But numbers only told half the tale. He looked composed, creative, and completely in control. Fans on X and forums were calling him the midfielder United should have already signed. Analysts compared his performance to Ruben Amorim's tactical blueprint, a system built on mobility, pressing, and vertical transitions. Elliott Anderson looked like the prototype. Reports of Forest slapping a £100 to £120 million valuation on Elliott Anderson had already been doing the rounds for weeks, long before this match. The speculation had gone into overdrive after his England debut and early season form. But after this performance, those numbers suddenly didn't sound so outrageous. If anything, they looked like a warning. A statement that Forest knew exactly what they had. For United fans watching that day, the verdict was already clear. At the City Ground, Elliott Anderson hadn't just impressed. He'd just delivered the kind of performance that felt like an audition for Old Trafford. And he passed it with flying colours. What happened at the City Ground wasn't just about one game. It was the confirmation of something that had been building for months. The arrival of Elliott Anderson. Not just as a Premier League talent, but as one of England's most intriguing midfield prospects. His stock had already been rising fast, from Bristol Rovers to Newcastle, from youth tournaments to England's senior setup under Thomas Tuchel. Every step of his journey had shown glimpses of this moment, but it was his form through 2025 that pushed him into another category entirely. Tuchel's praise after Elliott Anderson's debut wasn't light. He called him very mobile, very physical, a player who loves to defend and break lines. For a young midfielder, those are rare words. The kind reserved for players who change the rhythm of a match, not just keep up with it. At Nottingham Forest, he's done exactly that. Week after week, he's evolved from a promising academy graduate into the heartbeat of a Premier League side that refuses to be predictable. His mix of drive, creativity, and defensive bite makes him hard to label. Part playmaker, part destroyer, part leader, and that's what's made him so attractive to top clubs. In an era where transfer fees are inflated and hype moves faster than reality, Elliott Anderson's rise feels earned. Forest's reported £100 to £120 million valuation might sound extreme, but it's also a reflection of what he represents, a complete modern midfielder, still years from his peak. For Manchester United, the intrigue is obvious. Ruben Amorim's rebuild depends on energy, versatility, and players who can transition quickly from defence to attack. Elliott Anderson fits that blueprint perfectly. The kind of midfielder who could slot in alongside either Bruno Fernandes or Casemiro right now, giving United more balance and bite in possession. But the long-term picture is even clearer. With Casemiro expected to move on in the next year or two, Elliott Anderson looks like the natural successor, and eventually, the ideal partner for Kobbie Mainoo. Together, they could form a young, all-English midfield core built for Ruben Amorim's high-pressing, quick transition style. Beyond tactics and speculation, there's something deeper about Elliott Anderson's story. He's a player who's had to fight through setbacks, from loan spells and injuries to the noise of transfer talk and international tug-of-war. And through it all, he's shown the kind of resilience that separates talent from trajectory. Whether he stays at Forest or one day walks out at Old Trafford, one thing feels certain. That Saturday afternoon at the City Ground will be remembered as the turning point, the match he proved he belongs among England's elite. Elliott Anderson may not have chosen to make it an audition, but it was, and he passed with flying colours. Football has a way of revealing the future before it happens. Sometimes it's in a 17-year-old's first touch. Other times, it's in a single goal, a single game, when everything clicks, when potential meets the moment. At the City Ground, on a crisp afternoon in Nottingham, Elliott Anderson had that moment. Against Manchester United, with the pressure on and the noise rising, he didn't just compete, he commanded. Ruben Amorim and his staff will have seen it, the work rate, the balance, the fearlessness to play forward when others play safe. The question now isn't whether Elliott Anderson is good enough for United. It's whether United are brave enough to build the future around players like him. Because every rebuild starts with a choice. Stick with what's safe, or move toward what's next. So tell me, after what you saw at the City Ground, should Manchester United go all in for Elliott Anderson? Let's talk about it in the comments.